Before I introduce you to my next guest today, I want to make sure that you're aware of two new resources to help you to increase your productivity, clarify your purpose, and improve your communication skills. The first one is our Facebook community called Leadership with Purpose. So it's a private community. So go to Facebook groups, search for Leadership with Purpose, and send a request to be invited into the group. There's a few questions for you to answer, and then live to have you a part of that community of other like-minded leaders. Our team is really excited about launching the Next Level Coaching Roadmap. It's a group coaching format, so highly recommend that you check that out and to get your questions answered. If you're a leader that's experiencing any of the following, this is definitely a group format that's going to help you break through to your next level within leadership and your career. So if you have any fear about moving to the next level in your leadership career, this is a group that you'll want to connect with. If you have loss of confidence, if you're kind of confused, like not knowing really how to tap into the hidden job market, if you have a desire to really to grow to the next level, this is definitely a group that you'll want to be able to connect with. If you want to know how to stay calm in a high stress environment, there's going to be strategies, tips, and resources, conversations all around how to develop skills to do just that. So if you want more information, head over to warrenwandling.com/the next level coaching. And in there on that page, you'll notice more information about the coaching roadmap, but also there's a link for you to schedule a phone call with me so we can help really figure out if this is the right fit to helping you take your career to the next level. Okay, again, that's warrenwandling.com/the next level coaching. Welcome back to another episode of How to Become an Obstacle Buster. I'm your host, Warren Wandling, the show that's dedicated helping leaders and entrepreneurs to overcome their obstacles, build resilience, and achieve success. And I have a great guest to do just that with us today, Jim Wetrich. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you, Warren. Thank you so much. Delighted and honored to be with you today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Very interesting background. As the CEO of the Wetrich Group of Companies and best-selling author, tell us about your business.
Yeah, thank you, Warren. The services under our corporate umbrella are actually quite broad. For example, we help medical device companies get their products into hospitals in the United States. My primary personal mission is developing CEOs and leaders, and I do that through providing executive coaching, leadership development training, mentoring services to companies and to individuals. A theme of what we do, Warren, is captured in our call to action: be the leaders, find the leaders, create the leaders.
Oh, wow, I like that.
Yeah, thank you. Over my career, I've bought companies, built businesses, grown businesses, turned around businesses, led businesses, and created joint ventures and partnerships.
Well, that's an exciting adventure, certainly in reference to being involved with all types of businesses, it sounds like, as well as probably across the board working with different levels of CEOs and leaders, helping them to excel to the next level.
It's been extremely rewarding, Warren. As you know, you provide some of these services, and it's great to have the opportunity to work with people and help them grow and develop and become a better leader.
Well, what is the greatest obstacle your clients encounter?
Yeah, Warren, I think the answer to that question today is much different than just several years ago. On top of the pandemic, we now have the situation in Ukraine, which is affecting so many of us deeply and causing great degrees of stress and tremendous angst. Generally, from a business perspective, what I hear most are challenges companies and executives are having with employee retention, communication challenges, scheduling and time management issues, and finally, uncertainty and risk.
So out of those that you just listed, is there one that you see are they numbered in order of how that you see, like uncertainty of risk? Is that higher than communication strategies, or how does that fare in reference to ranking those?
Yeah, good question. I didn't schedule it that way, but or list it that way. But I think right now the biggest challenge is scheduling and time management issues. Companies are really struggling that, particularly as they think about what their new business model looks like and how the return to work is going to occur and what that's going to look like. Everybody seems to be overwhelmed by digital and virtual technologies, and also very little time to get individual production done. So I'd say the scheduling and time management issues are probably the biggest that I hear.
So within time management, that's always a key buzzword, right? In reference to the process for CEOs, and then their leadership teams being productive on down to the rest of the team.
Yep.
So in today's world that we're currently operating in, with a lot of remote work or virtual, whatever, wherever we're working,
Yep.
is there one key strategy that you have discovered or learned about that can help other CEOs or leaders in
Yeah, I
this
think,
age?
yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a couple things, Warren. One is companies are now starting to carve out what they call collaborative time. So if you're working 40 hours a week, and many people are working well beyond that, I want to take, maybe 16 hours of that work week and carve it out for collaborative time, where you and your calendar are available for colleagues around the company to collaborate. But we also need dedicated individual time, personal time, where people can get their work done. Because as you know, I'm sure you hear it all the time. You're talking to someone like, Warren, I got to go. I got to get on my next, Zoom. So companies are trying to be really intentional about carving out individual time for people to get their work done. And I think that's really important. The other thing I think is, as we grapple with what life looks like going forward, making sure that at business, we're not doing just completely everything that's 100% transactional. Part of the challenge that managers are having and leaders are having is, we miss that time by the watering fountain or the coffee pot or the cafeteria or walking outside, to take a walk. Time together where we're not necessarily always 100% focused on business. So how do I, as a manager, and how do I, as a leader, make sure I carve out some time just for non-transactional conversations? Like, hey, Warren, this is Jim. I'm calling. I don't want to talk about business. I just want to take your pulse. 15 minutes. Just let me know, how are you doing? How are things going on? So I think that kind of quick touch base that isn't, focused on business is also very important.
So is it that informal that you could either like send someone a text to see if they're available to talk for 15 minutes? Is it unstructured that way then?
I think it can be, and even though I don't have a large organization and staff right now, but I just call people up, and if they pick up, we chat. If not, I just leave them a message saying, "Hey, no need to call back. I'm just checking in, see how you're doing. I know you went to a meeting last week. Sorry I wasn't there. It was a good national conference. I'd love to talk to you about it sometime." So, I think it can be both, Warren. It can be somewhat, formalized through an appointment, or more just informal.
Sure. You mentioned one on that part of that list, Jim, was communication strategies. So is it specifically against, since we have different generations now that we're working together and there's different levels of communication to those different generations based on the age and their expectations. Are some of the strategies from a Gen perspective, or you think is it more broader than that in reference to strategies?
Great question, and I think it's both. We all have different preferences for communication. Some want to call, some want to text, some want to email, some want, snail mail, whatever it
Yeah,
is. But I think one of the bigger challenges I'm seeing, Warren, in businesses is that they have too many communication portals. I've got Teams, I've got Slack, I've got Outlook, I've got Basecamp, I've got my cell phone, I've got WhatsApp. And we're finding a lot of people are spending huge amounts of time chasing down, where do I get this information? I've got the intranet. I may have SharePoint. And I think leaders really have to put, their foot down and say, look, for email communication, we're going to use this. For project management, we're going to use this, and that's it. Because too many people are spending way too much time, hugely inefficient, literally just chasing down communication and messages.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That can be, and based on the level of stress, that can increase the level of stress just to find that where that piece of communication took place because it's
It's
hard
no
to
doubt.
remember.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
So, what was a key strategy that contributed to your success building your businesses?
Yeah, thank you, Warren. That's a good question. I think agility and continuous growth and focus. My business today, for example, does not look much like it did when we started some 22 years ago. I have evolved and the business has evolved. Having a very strong network, having key people with me on that journey, and persistence are some of the key ingredients I think that have led to my success, Warren.
Oh, excellent. So, I'm really curious because this is some of your background. I think also within in your book is um, why do good leaders fail?
Yeah, Warren. I think it's a great question. Arrogance, narcissism, and naivete are what I call the triple threats facing CEOs and senior leaders. As I noted in my book, Stifled, I've seen so many leaders and managers fail because they do not know what they do not know, and these individuals feel that they must have all the answers. Coaching can help executives stay grounded, be vulnerable, and be more self-aware.
Yeah, which it's interesting within from a coaching perspective because some of the certainly at that level of the CEO, I deal a lot within using the DISC model, the
Yep.
DIS
Uh-huh.
model, and interesting. A lot of leaders can be in that DI or DC frame
Yep.
of mind, depending certainly when you're talking about um, not just transactional relationships, but
Yep.
being able to connect and not just driven by task. It sounds like with that list, though, a lot of leaders can move naturally to those tendencies. And so when the high stress environments increase, we typically move towards those things that are easy or that are natural to us. How do you help leaders then to overcome those tendencies?
I think Warren's a good question, and part of it is identification, right? Holding up the mirror, asking the questions how they do that. Assessments like you're talking about can be helpful. 360 assessments of their team and their organization, I think, can be really helpful in getting other perspectives from people, and generally people feel pretty comfortable filling those out if the size is large, so they know their responses are going to be anonymous. So part of it is making sure they understand that it's okay not to have all the answers, right? One of the things that Jeff Immelt, the former GE chairman and CEO, wrote in his book Hot Seat was, he wished he'd said more often, I don't know. And knowing what you don't know, I think, is so critical. And now everything's become so specialized, Warren, across almost every industry and every job function. It's just not possible to have a good sense of what's going on in a large enterprise. It's just too complex. The other thing, Warren, is that data, and Gallup's done a lot of work. I'm sure you've seen it. They said that in a survey of more than 1 million people, U.S. workers concluded that the number one reason people quit their job was a bad boss or supervisor. A similar Gallup survey noted that 51% of the people who voluntarily leave their organization do so to get away from their manager. So part of my message is we have to manage the managers, right?
Right.
Nobody's really managing the managers. We promote the individual contributors, we train them, and then we cut them loose and we don't help them. So helping leaders understand that they've got to continue to develop and work with those managers, I think, is also critical.
Yeah, very, very good point. So, why is it important for leaders to have developed self awareness?
Yeah, I think thank you, Warren. I think it's a good question. First and foremost, I think understanding who you are and what you stand for is critical to becoming truly self-aware. What is it that's important to you in your work and at home and in your life? Really, what's important? Years ago, when I was still in the hospital business, I heard the CEO, I believe it was University of Chicago Hospitals. It may have been Northwestern. I can't remember. I do remember his name, Bernie Lackner, speaking to a group of young healthcare executives in Chicago. And he said, what do you stand for? Who are you? What's important to you? And I think that's a part of it. I have a chapter dedicated in my book about self-awareness, and it starts out and ends with quotes from a gentleman who really spurred me on to thinking about leadership, Warren Bennis. And his quote is, "Self-awareness is the most difficult task that any of us faces, but until you know yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, you cannot succeed in any but the most superficial sense of the word." And I think that's a great quote.
Well, that is a great quote. And
Yeah.
I'm sure within your executive coaching practice, when you're in that role, you're to help guide those leaders to be really experienced what self-awareness looks like.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's just really critical, and part of it is accept responsibility and blame no one, and you reflect on your experiences, and I think self reflection is really critical to building your self awareness.
I know years ago it might have been considered a soft skill, but I think self-awareness is really an important skill to be able to adapt and be self-aware, like the skill like developing resilience. Those leaders that are first coming into understanding the importance of self-awareness, and so if, let's say they find themselves being stuck, do you have a strategy that you use to help that leader just become unstuck?
Well, I think part of it is a little bit of just codifying and writing down. What are some of the challenges that they're having in that regard? What is it about, as you mentioned, being vulnerable, about being authentic, about being self-aware? What is it that they're using to understand that? And I think part of it is, do people have somebody like a coach, like a mentor, like an advisory board that can help, right, hold the mirror up and say, this is how you think you may be coming across, or this is how you think the message is being communicated, but that's not what we're hearing on this side. So I think, the proverbial mirror, somebody to help you reflect and realize that it's so easy, Warren, to get caught in what I kind of describe as a binary world. I remember when an executive at a company I worked for said, if you want to be a sales manager, you have to go from sales rep, come into the headquarters, work in our contract administration department, and then we'll send you out in the field as a manager. But you must come into our headquarters, do this job, and then we'll make you a manager. And not more than 1 month after that decree came out, a sales rep was promoted directly to a manager position because, it just was required and there wasn't anybody ready. So part of what we have to do as leaders is realize, there are going to be exceptions. So make sure in your communication that companies have to pivot, and companies have to sometimes do things that aren't exactly what they talk about in terms of this is the normal process. But if you make it totally binary and say you must and then make an exception, it just really hurts your credibility as a leader.
Right. So, in your opinion, why do leaders need to know about managing the modern workplace?
Oh gosh, Warren.
It
Yeah,
keeps changing.
it's changing by the minute. There's no doubt about it. I do believe that, and I'll be the first to admit, I never would have imagined, having been an office person most of my career, that we could have gone virtual and been as successful as we have been, and as we did in the speed with which we did it, it was unbelievable, and I never would have imagined that we were capable of doing it. So I think the playbooks have really been turned upside down by the pandemic, and for the most part, what worked yesterday is no longer relevant going forward. We all need help in maneuvering and navigating this new territory. And in that regard, I do believe that coaching is more important than ever. Two key areas are must resolve situations, I think, right now, Warren. Work locations, and we talked a little bit earlier about communications. The way we work, I don't believe will ever be the same. Work boundaries now are much more porous between home and the office. It's a definite blur. Flexibility will be key, as will be creating blocks of time, as I mentioned earlier, for collaboration, and then quiet time for individual concentration and production. Physical return to work in some instances, Warren, will be a choice that employees make. I've talked to people that are working for large companies that have basically gone virtual, and actually they're upset because they don't want to be in their small, New York apartment. They want to go back to the office. They want to be around people, and they're very upset that their company is, gone virtual. So I think we have to understand that there's a wide variety of needs and interests out there. And one thing everybody learned, Warren, is don't set a date for when you're going to go back to the office.
Right, exactly, right.
Exactly.
2 weeks is a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So it sounds like within the modern workplace, part of your conversation today was all about flexibility, is being anticipated what might change. Because what's said is today, 6 months from now, it could be completely different, and probably will be, in reference to adjusting whatever that looks like.
I think so, Warren. I am very. I mean, I talked to a gentleman recently who has a large business that runs physician offices, and he said, "Jim, I've got 200 people that used to come to an office every day in my office building down in Florida, and they spent 8 hours a day doing billing. That's what they did." And he said, there's no reason those people can't do that from their home. They don't need to drive a half an hour, come to the office and sit in front of a computer for 8 hours. He said, fact of the matter is, I don't really care when during the 24-hour period they get their 8 hours of billing done. They can do it in 4 2-hour, bursts. They can do it from, 4 p.m. to midnight. They can do it 4 a.m. He said, I don't really care. We know that they're doing their work. We know that they're logging on. We know that they're doing their billing. And I think a lot of people realize that type of work has changed, and um, people have gained great value by not having to spend so much time commuting, getting to the office, and fighting with traffic, and paying for parking, and figuring out what they're going to do for lunch.
So leadership is influence. What's one key top strategy that you share with your clients to help increase their results?
Yeah, I think Warren, there's two things that are really important. One is finding developing mentors. When I look back, over my 40-year career, I've had five incredibly powerful mentors. One of them was very formal, and the other were really quite informal. And but there's no doubt in my mind, Warren, that I would have never been able to have done what I have done if I hadn't had these mentors in my life. And I think the other thing that's important is having a personal board of advisors, having people that you can call on. One of the things well, as you know, Warren, and your clients know, particularly at the top, it can be extremely lonely, and it can be very difficult. And you can't always talk to your staff about things. You can't always talk to your board about things. You've got to be able to sort through things yourself, and you also need to be able to cathart and
Right.
let some steam go out. My mom was born in 1917, so she was 40 when I was born, and she'd be in her hundreds now, and she used the old pressure cooker, and that steam would come out of that valve. And I think we all need that kind of pressure cooker release valve in our life. Who can we go to blow off some steam without necessarily burdening the people we work with?
Right. Great suggestions. Certainly can, if it's a mentor or if an executive coach,
Yep,
coaching relationship, someone that's neutral in that relationship.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So I believe success leaves clues. One of those clues are the books that leaders read.
Yeah.
What are some books that have influenced you?
Yeah, I'd say that's a great question. I'm a prodigious reader, and I've got a large library, and I love to read, I love book recommendations. I think Warren Bennis's book on becoming a leader, which I bought in 1989, is one of my go-to referrals. I don't know of anything particularly unworthy that was produced by Peter Drucker.
Oh, yes.
I think there's so much value. He's unquestionably one of the brightest business minds we've ever been around. I have great respect and talk about it in my book, and also recommend her book or books now by the Stanford professor Carol Dweck, who's
Yes.
written about the growth mindset. That's one of my favorites. Jeff Pfeffer, a Stanford professor, has written several books, and I've found his books to be extremely valuable and very well done and very researched. Peter Thiel and Ben Horowitz have written, I think, marquee, important leadership books. And finally, at least good to great, and there are others, the work by Jim Collins. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great list that you shared, which is a great start for those leaders that are listening to this podcast to add to your list. If you don't have those books, to make sure that you pick up those authors, just continue growing your library.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And, Warren, I'm 65 years old and I'm still learning and I'm still making mistakes. And there's just so much great stuff that's come out, and recently there's been great work by researchers in Google about psychological safety and articles written about that. And right. So this is all new stuff, right? We weren't talking about this, even 10 years ago. So staying relevant, staying current, listening to podcasts like yours are just so important because the world's changing and evolving, and we have to stay relevant and we have to stay current. And the only way to do that is to listen to podcasts like this and get very helpful, information.
Right, exactly. Yeah, staying current is so important. So what does
Critical.
the future hold for you? Are you working on any special projects?
Well, I'm working on another book, Warren, and I'm continuing to teach part time. I'm an adjunct instructor at Texas Wesleyan University, which is a small Methodist school in East Fort Worth, Texas. I'm also serving on the global board as an elected board member of the professional coaches of the International Coaching Federation.
Oh,
And
awesome. Very
yeah,
good.
yeah, so that's been really good. And I've also got several research projects in the area of leadership that I would like ultimately to work on and to complete.
Well, excellent. That sounds like some exciting projects that you're working on, as well as being involved with the cutting edge think tanks, if you will, certainly within ICF.
It's been really rewarding. I just started, I think, back in January or February, and it's been really fabulous. And the staff is incredible, and there are two of us on the board from the U.S. and a number of people from all over the world, and working with those people and hearing what's happening with coaching literally around the world is just extremely exciting and very rewarding, and very invigorating and very stimulating.
So, if our listeners wanted to connect, which I know that they'll want to, what's the best way for them to be able to reach out?
Yeah, Warren, they can find me at jimwetrich.com, and they can also find me at James G. Wetrich on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, and if you go to jimwetrich.com, you can also drop me a message there, and I'll get back to you on that. So be happy to follow up with anybody that has any particular interests.
Well, excellent. Well, I'll make sure both of those links are in our show notes.
Great, great, great. It's been super exciting and very much an honor, Warren, to be with you and your listeners today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you sharing your strategies, tips, and resources, helping our leaders to overcome those obstacles and build resilience.
Yeah, great, great. Thank you so much, Warren.
Well, until next time, this is your host, Warren Wandling, saying, be an obstacle buster.